The morning air on 7 tasted different than Earth air. Dr. Lisa Morgan had been on the planet for 3 weeks now, and she still noticed it every time she stepped outside the research camp. It was cleaner somehow, sharper, like breathing in pure mountain wind, even though they were in a valley surrounded by massive trees. Lisa walked slowly through the clearing, her scanning device hanging from her belt. She was supposed to be collecting soil samples, but honestly, she spent most of her time watching the forest. They lived out there, somewhere in those shadows. The research team had seen them exactly 4 times since landing. Each time, the wolf-like creatures had observed the humans from a distance before melting back into the darkness between the trees. The expedition leader, Commander Greg Palmer, had been clear about the rules. No contact with the natives, no interference. The Galactic Council had strict laws about that sort of thing. 7 was classified as a developing world, which meant they were off-limits. Lisa could watch them, document them, study their behavior from afar, but she could never interact with them directly. She knelt down and scooped some dirt into a sample container. The forest was quiet today, too quiet, actually. Usually she could hear the calls of the native birds, the rustling of small creatures in them, but today there was nothing, just silence. Lisa stood up and brushed the dirt from her knees. That was when she saw it. A small shape emerged from between 2 massive tree trunks at the edge of the clearing. It moved slowly, awkwardly. Lisa froze, her hand instinctively moving to the communicator on her wrist. She did not press the button, not yet. The shape came closer, and Lisa could see it clearly now. It was a cub, no bigger than a 6-year-old human child. Its fur was a deep gray color with lighter patches around its face. It walked on 4 legs like the adults did, but something was wrong. Its left front leg dragged behind it, and every few steps the cub would stop and whimper. Lisa's medical training kicked in immediately. That leg was broken. She could see it even from 20 feet away. The foreleg bent at an angle that was definitely not natural. The cub was in pain. The small creature kept coming toward her. It moved with determination despite the injury, its eyes locked on Lisa. Those eyes were remarkable. They were larger than a wolf's eyes, more forward-facing, and they held an intelligence that made Lisa's breath catch in her throat. This was not just an animal. There was something more. The cub reached the middle of the clearing and stopped. It looked back toward the forest, then back at Lisa. It took 3 more painful steps and collapsed onto its side about 10 feet away from where Lisa stood. That was when Lisa noticed the others. They came out of the forest slowly, one at a time. Adult, each one as large as a grown wolf but built heavier, more muscular. They did not approach. They simply stood at the tree line, watching. Lisa counted 12, then 15, then 20. More kept appearing until the entire edge of the clearing was lined with gray and brown forms. They were not threatening. Their ears were forward, their tails neutral. They were simply watching, waiting. Lisa looked down at the cub. It had rolled onto its belly and was looking up at her. The small creature made a soft sound, somewhere between a whine and a chirp. Its injured leg twitched, and the cub flinched in pain. Lisa's mind raced. This was a test. It had to be. They had been watching the humans for weeks. They had seen the research team's camp, their equipment, their behavior. They were intelligent enough to understand that humans had knowledge, technology, medicine. And now they were presenting Lisa with a choice. Help the cub and break the non-interference protocols. Walk away and follow the law. The pack waited, the cub waited, the whole forest seemed to hold its breath. Lisa thought about the council rules. She thought about Commander Palmer's warnings. She thought about the consequences of what she was considering. Contact with a developing species could end her career. She could face charges. The entire expedition could be shut down. Then she looked at the cub again, at its eyes filled with pain and a strange kind of hope, at its small body trembling, at its twisted leg that would never heal properly without help. Lisa made her decision. She walked forward slowly, keeping her movements calm and steady. The pack tensed but did not move. The cub watched her approach, its breathing rapid and shallow. Lisa knelt down beside the small creature and spoke softly. "Hey there, little one, let me help you." She did not know if they understood human language, but they understood tone. The cub's breathing slowed slightly. It did not try to move away as Lisa reached out her hand. Lisa examined the leg carefully. It was definitely broken, a clean break from what she could feel. The cub whimpered when she touched it but did not snap or try to bite. It simply watched her with those intelligent eyes. She pulled her field medical kit from her belt. It was designed for human injuries, but the basics would work for any creature with bones and muscles. She had antiseptic, bandaging material, and lightweight splinting rods. It would have to be enough. The pack remained at the forest edge. One of them, the largest, took a single step forward. Lisa glanced up at it. The big was clearly the leader. Its fur was darker than the others, almost black in places, and it had scars across its shoulders. This was the alpha. It watched Lisa with an intensity that was almost human. Lisa turned her attention back to the cub. She worked slowly, talking the whole time in that same soft voice. First, she cleaned the area around the break. The cub flinched but held still. Then she carefully straightened the leg. The cub yelped and the entire pack moved forward half a step. Lisa froze. The alpha made a sound, a low rumble in its throat. The pack stopped moving. The alpha's eyes never left Lisa's face. Lisa finished straightening the leg and quickly applied the splint, wrapping it firmly but not too tight. She used almost her entire roll of medical tape to secure everything. When she was done, the cub's leg was immobilized in a proper position to heal. The cub stood up shakily. It tested the splinted leg, putting a little weight on it. The splint held. The cub looked at Lisa, then at the alpha, then back at Lisa. It made a soft, chirping sound that almost sounded like gratitude. The alpha stepped fully into the clearing. It approached slowly, its posture relaxed but confident. It came right up to Lisa, so close she could feel its breath on her face. The creature was huge up close, its shoulder level with Lisa's chest even though she was kneeling. It could kill her easily if it wanted to. The alpha lowered its head and sniffed Lisa's hands. Then it did something Lisa would never forget. It pressed its forehead gently against her shoulder for just a moment. Then it turned, made a low sound to the pack, and walked back to the forest. The cub limped after it, moving more easily now with the splint. The pack followed their alpha back into the shadows. Within minutes, they had all disappeared. Lisa sat in the clearing alone, her heart pounding. Her hands were shaking. She had just broken about 15 different Galactic Council regulations. She had made direct contact with a developing species. She had provided medical aid that could influence their culture. She had interfered. She pressed the button on her communicator. Lieutenant Jake Henderson answered immediately. "Morgan, where have you been? You missed 2 check-ins." Lisa took a deep breath. "Jake, I need you and to come to my location, and you better bring Commander Palmer too." "What happened? Are you injured?" "No," Lisa said, looking at the forest where the pack had disappeared. "But we have a situation, a big one." She could already imagine Palmer's reaction, but Lisa did not regret what she had done. She had seen Commander Greg Palmer stood in the clearing with his arms crossed, staring at Lisa like she had just told him she planned to fly to the moon without a ship. Lieutenant Jake Henderson was more sympathetic, but he kept shaking his head. Dr. Brooks, the team's biologist, was the only one who looked more excited than angry. "You did what?" Greg said for the 3rd time. "I said a broken leg," Lisa repeated. She kept her voice calm. "The cub was injured. I helped it, that's all." "That's all?" Greg's voice went up an octave. "Lisa, you made direct physical contact with a native species. You provided medical intervention. Do you have any idea what the Council will do when they find out?" "They'll probably find me or send me home," Lisa said. "But I'd do it again." Jake stepped between them. "Let's all take a breath here. What's done is done. The question is what we do now." "We report it," Greg said immediately. "We contact the Council, explain what happened, and request a ruling." "And then what?" asked. "They'll probably shut down the whole expedition. We'll lose all our research. Everything we've learned about them will be locked away for another 100 years. Greg opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Was right. The Council moved slowly on developing world situations. If they thought there had been contamination, they would seal 7 off completely. "Maybe we wait," Jake suggested. "See if there are any consequences first. If they don't show up again, then no harm done, right?" Lisa was about to respond when grabbed her arm. "Look," she whispered. At the edge of the clearing, 3 had appeared. One was the alpha Lisa had seen before. Next to it was a smaller adult, and between them walked the cub, still limping but moving much better than before. The cub's splint was still in place. The 3 creatures walked into the clearing with confidence. They stopped about 15 feet from the humans and sat down. The alpha made a sound, a complex series of chirps and low rumbles. Then it waited. "What do we do?" Jake whispered. "Nobody move," Greg ordered. "Just stay calm." But the alpha was not looking at Greg. It was looking directly at Lisa. It made the sound again, more insistent this time. Lisa took a step forward. Greg grabbed her shoulder. "Don't," he said. "They're not threatening us," Lisa said quietly. "Look at their body language. They're asking for something." She pulled free from Greg's grip and walked slowly toward the three. The Alpha watched her approach, its head tilted slightly. When Lisa was 5 feet away, the Alpha stood and moved aside. The smaller adult, which Lisa now realized was probably the cub's mother, pushed the young one forward gently with her nose. The cub approached Lisa and sat down in front of her. It lifted its injured leg slightly, showing her the splint. "You want me to check it?" Lisa asked. The cub made a soft chirp. Lisa knelt down and carefully examined the splint. It was still secure. The leg felt warmer than the rest of the cub's body, which meant blood was flowing properly. There was no sign of infection. The break was healing. Lisa looked up at the mother. "It's doing well. The bone needs time, but it should heal straight." The mother could not understand Lisa's words, but she seemed to understand the gentle tone and the fact that Lisa was not removing the splint or showing concern. The mother made a pleased sound and nuzzled her cub. Then the Alpha did something that made all 4 humans gasp. It walked over to the tree line and dragged something into the clearing. It was a branch, and hanging from it were several small pouches made from woven plant fibers. The Alpha brought the branch to Lisa and dropped it at her feet. Lisa picked up one of the pouches. Inside were dried plants, roots, and what looked like crushed bark. She opened another pouch. This one held a different mixture, something that smelled sharp and clean. Lisa called out, "Come look at this." Approached cautiously, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. She took one of the pouches and examined the contents. "These are medicinal plants," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "This one is similar to Earth's willow bark, natural pain relief, and this one," she opened another pouch, "has antiseptic properties. Lisa, they're showing you their medicine." The Alpha made another sound and turned back toward the forest. It looked over its shoulder at Lisa, waiting. "I think it wants you to follow," Jake said. "Absolutely not," Greg started to say, but Lisa was already moving. "I'm going," she said. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." "Then I'm coming with you," said immediately. "Me too," Jake added. Greg looked at all of them, then at the 3 waiting patiently. He sighed deeply. "Fine, but we all stick together, and at the first sign of danger we leave. Understood." They followed the Alpha into the forest. The mother and cub walked beside Lisa, matching her pace. The trees were huge here, their trunks wider than a small house. The light filtered down in golden shafts through the canopy far above. After about 10 minutes of walking, they emerged into another clearing. This one was different. There were structures here, lean-tos made from branches and large leaves. There were fire pits with carefully arranged stones, and they were everywhere. At least 50 of them, maybe more. The pack members watched the humans with interest but no fear. Several young cubs played near one of the shelters, wrestling and tumbling over each other. Adults were working on various tasks. Some were preparing food, others were crafting tools from stone and wood. "They have a village," breathed. The council classified them as pre-tool using, but look at this. They have complex social structures, division of labor, permanent settlements. The Alpha led them to the largest shelter. An elderly female sat there, surrounded by more of the plant fiber pouches. Her fur was gray with age, and one of her eyes was clouded over. But the other eye was sharp and intelligent. The Alpha made a series of sounds to the old female. She looked at Lisa with her good eye, studying her for a long moment. Then she picked up one of the pouches with her teeth and brought it to Lisa. She dropped it at Lisa's feet and made an expectant sound. Lisa picked up the pouch and opened it. Inside was a paste made from crushed plants. It smelled bitter and earthy. The old female turned and lifted one of her back legs. There was a wound there, partially healed but still red around the edges. She looked back at Lisa. "She's their healer," Lisa said quietly, "and she's asking me to treat her wound." "This is incredible," whispered. "They understand the concept of medical exchange, of sharing knowledge between healers." Lisa looked at Greg. He stood there for a moment, his face conflicted. Then he nodded once. Lisa knelt beside the old healer. She examined the wound carefully. It looked like a bite from another animal several days old. It was trying to heal but needed help. Lisa pulled out her medical kit and cleaned the wound with antiseptic. The old female flinched but held still. Then Lisa applied antibacterial ointment and covered it with a light bandage. The old healer stood and tested her leg. She walked a few steps, then made a pleased rumbling sound. She approached Lisa and did what the Alpha had done before, pressing her forehead gently against Lisa's shoulder. Then the real exchange began. The old healer sat down and began pulling out different pouches. She would open one, let Lisa smell it, then gesture to different parts of her body or make sounds that indicated pain, fever, or injury. Lisa caught on quickly. She started showing the healer items from her medical kit, demonstrating their use. They worked together for over an hour. The old healer learned about antiseptic and antibiotics. Lisa learned about local plants that reduced fever and inflammation. They could not speak each other's languages, but they communicated through demonstration, gesture, and a shared understanding of healing. The rest of the pack watched this exchange with intense interest. Several younger came closer, observing everything. They were learning too. As the sun began to set, the Alpha stood and made a sound. It was time for the humans to leave. The old healer gave Lisa several pouches of medicinal plants as gifts. Lisa gave her extra bandages and a small bottle of antiseptic. They walked the humans back to the edge of their territory. The cub stayed close to Lisa the whole way, occasionally looking up at her with what could only be described as affection. When they reached familiar ground, the Alpha stopped. It looked at Lisa, then at the other humans. It made a complex sound that seemed almost like a question. "I think it's asking if we'll come back," said. Lisa nodded at the Alpha. "Yes," she said, even though it probably could not understand the word. "We'll come back." The Alpha seemed satisfied. It turned and led its pack back into the forest. The cub looked back one more time before disappearing into the shadows. The four humans stood in silence for a moment. "We're in so much trouble," Jake finally said. "Probably," Lisa agreed. "But it was worth it," added. "What we just witnessed, that exchange of knowledge between species, that's never been documented before." Greg was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "We need to report this, but not to the council, not yet. First, we need to document everything. We need proof that they are more advanced than anyone thought. Because when the council finds out what we've done, that's the only thing that might save us." Lisa looked back at the forest. Somewhere in there, a cub was healing because she had chosen compassion over protocol. An old healer was learning new ways to help her pack because Lisa had shared her knowledge. A bridge had been built between two species. The council ship arrived exactly 3 weeks after Lisa first helped the injured cub. It dropped out of orbit like a falling star, its engines burning bright against the morning sky of 7. Greg had known this day would come eventually, but that did not make it any easier. Ambassador stepped off the transport ship with the kind of confidence that came from decades of bureaucratic power. He was a species known for their rigid devotion to rules and procedures. His scaled skin was a deep purple, and his eyes were cold as he surveyed the human research camp. "Commander Palmer," said without greeting, "I am here to investigate reports of protocol violations regarding the native population of this world." Greg stood straight. "Yes, Ambassador, we've prepared a full report." "I will hear from Dr. Lisa Morgan first," said, "alone." Lisa stepped forward. She had prepared for this moment, rehearsed what she would say, but standing in front of she realized that no amount of preparation would matter. The ambassador had already decided she was guilty. They sat in the research camp's main tent, activated a recording device, and began his questioning. "On the 17th day of your expedition, you made physical contact with a native juvenile. Is this correct?" "Yes," Lisa said. "You provided medical treatment to this juvenile. Is this correct?" "Yes." "You were aware that such contact violated Galactic Council protocols regarding developing worlds?" Lisa took a breath. "I was aware of the protocols, yes." "Then why did you violate them?" "Because a child was hurt," Lisa said simply. "It had a broken leg, it was in pain, I'm a doctor. I took an oath to help those in need." His expression did not change. "Your oath has no bearing on council law. They are classified as a developing species. Contact with them is forbidden." "The classification is wrong," Lisa said. "They are far more advanced than anyone realized. They have language, complex social structures, permanent settlements, and they understand abstract concepts like knowledge exchange and cooperation." "You determined this through your illegal contact," said. Any evidence gathered through protocol violations cannot be considered valid. Then send your own team to observe them, Lisa challenged. Without making contact, just watch them, you'll see what I saw. Made a note on his device. The Council will make that determination. For now, you will cease all activities on this world. Your expedition is suspended pending investigation. Over the next week, brought in his own research team. They set up observation posts around the territory and began documenting everything with cold scientific detachment. Lisa was confined to the camp, forbidden from approaching the forest. But they noticed the new arrivals. They noticed that Lisa was no longer visiting, and they noticed that these new observers kept their distance. On the 5th day of the Council's investigation, something happened that no one expected. The pack emerged from the forest, not at the usual clearing, but right at the edge of the human camp. The Alpha was at the front, and beside it walked the old healer. Behind them were dozens of pack members, and in the center of the group, the Cub walked without limping. Its leg had healed. Security team immediately moved to form a barrier between thee and the camp. But the Alpha simply sat down and waited. It made no aggressive moves, showed no signs of threat. It simply waited as if expecting someone. Lisa watched from her tent. The Cub was looking around, clearly searching for something, for her. "They're looking for you," said quietly. She had come to visit Lisa despite orders against fraternization. "They don't understand why you've stopped coming." "I can't go out there," Lisa said, though her heart pulled her toward the waiting pack. But the decision was taken out of her hands. Approached himself, his security team surrounding him. He stopped 10 feet from the Alpha and spoke into his translator device. "We are representatives of the Galactic Council. You must return to your territory. This area is restricted." The Alpha tilted its head, studying. Then it did something remarkable. It stood, walked around the ambassador, and headed straight for Lisa's tent. The security team moved to intercept, but Greg stepped in front of them. "Stand down," he ordered. "It's not being aggressive." The Alpha reached Lisa's tent and looked inside. It saw Lisa standing there and made a sound, a clear greeting. The Cub pushed past its pack leader and ran to Lisa, making happy chirping noises. Lisa could not help herself. She knelt down and examined the Cub's leg. The bone had healed perfectly straight. The Cub was young and had recovered well. The old healer approached next. She was carrying something in her mouth, a bundle wrapped in leaves. She dropped it at Lisa's feet and stepped back. Lisa unwrapped the bundle carefully. Inside were dozens of small pouches, each filled with different medicinal plants. But there was something else, too. There were pieces of bark with markings carved into them, symbols. Grabbed one of the bark pieces. "Lisa, these are written language. They're showing different plants and their uses. They've created a medical reference guide." Pushed through the crowd that had gathered. He stared at the bark pieces, his expression finally showing something other than cold certainty. He was shocked. "This is impossible," he said. "The timeline is wrong. Species don't develop written language this quickly." "Unless they were already on the verge of it," Greg said, stepping forward. "And they just needed a catalyst. Lisa's interaction with them didn't create their intelligence, it revealed it." The Alpha made another sound, and the entire pack responded. They began bringing forward items, laying them at the feet of the humans. Stone tools, woven baskets, carved symbols, evidence of a sophisticated culture. But the most remarkable thing came last. A young approached, carrying a large, flat piece of wood. On it was carved an image, a picture made of simple lines and shapes. It showed a human figure kneeling beside a small. The human was touching the small one's leg. Around them, larger stood watching. It was a record, a historical document. They were recording their first contact with humans. They were recording Lisa's act of kindness. Stared at the carving for a long moment. Then he turned to his research team. "Scan everything. I want full documentation of all artifacts." Over the next 3 days, his team worked alongside the human researchers, documenting everything they showed them. The pack was cooperative, even eager to demonstrate their capabilities. They showed the council team their village, their tools, their methods of food preservation and storage. They demonstrated their healing practices, their group decision-making processes, their care for their young and elderly. The old healer was particularly impressive. She showed them plants for fever reduction, pain management, wound care, and infection prevention. She demonstrated knowledge of anatomy through gestures and careful treatment of injuries. She had been learning from Lisa, yes, but she had also been teaching Lisa. It was a true exchange. On the fourth day, called everyone together. He looked tired and for the first time uncertain. "The evidence is clear," he said. "They are more advanced than our initial classification indicated. They possess language, both verbal and now written. They have complex social structures and demonstrate understanding of abstract concepts. They have technology appropriate to their environment and needs." "So you'll reclassify them?" Greg asked. "It's not that simple," said. "The question before the Council now is not whether they are advanced, but whether human contact has artificially accelerated their development. Did Dr. Morgan's intervention push them forward faster than they would have gone naturally?" "Does it matter?" Lisa said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "I mean, really, does it matter? They were developing. Maybe my helping that cub sped things up a little. Maybe it gave them confidence to show us what they were already capable of. But they were already intelligent. They were already creating and learning. I didn't make them that way. I just acknowledged it." "The law exists for a reason," said, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. "To protect developing species from exploitation and cultural contamination." "But who does it really protect?" asked. "Because from where I'm standing, the law was about to hide an intelligent species from the galaxy for another century just because they don't have spaceships yet. Is that protection or is that just maintaining the status?" Did not answer. He looked at the pack, still waiting patiently at the edge of the camp. The Alpha was watching him with those intelligent eyes, as if understanding that its species' future was being decided. "I will submit my findings to the Council," finally said. "They will make the final determination. Until then, this expedition will continue under observation. Dr. Morgan, you are restricted from direct contact with the Council's ruling." Lisa nodded, but her heart sank. She looked at the cub, now healthy and strong. She looked at the old healer, who had become something like a colleague in their brief time working together. She looked at the Alpha, whose trust she had earned with one simple act of kindness. The Alpha seemed to understand. It made a soft sound and turned, leading its pack. The Council chambers on the orbital station above 7 were cold and formal. Lisa sat in a chair designed for beings much larger than humans, her feet barely touching the floor. Around her, representatives from dozens of species watched from elevated seats. She felt very small. Ambassador presented his evidence first. He showed recordings of the village, their tools, their written symbols. He displayed the medical knowledge they had demonstrated. His report was thorough and professional, but it ended with a recommendation that surprised Lisa. "While the show remarkable development," concluded, "I cannot determine with certainty whether this development occurred naturally or was accelerated by human contact. Therefore, I recommend Dr. Morgan be found in violation of protocols, but that they themselves be reclassified as a monitored developing species rather than completely restricted." It was not what Lisa had hoped for, but it was better than nothing. At least they would not be completely hidden away. Then it was Lisa's turn to speak. She stood and faced the Council members. "I won't apologize for helping an injured child," she began. "But I want to be clear about something. I didn't teach them to be intelligent. I didn't give them the ability to create or communicate or care for each other. They already had all of that. What I did was acknowledge it. I treated them as people, not as animals to be observed. And they responded by trusting us enough to show us who they really are." One of the Council members, a tall being, clicked its mandibles together. "The question is not their current capabilities, but whether your interference changed their natural development path." "With respect," Lisa said, "I think that's the wrong question. The real question should be, what kind of galaxy do we want to live in? One where we hide behind rules and watch suffering without helping, or one where we reach out to each other with compassion?" The chamber erupted in debate. Some Council members agreed with Lisa. Others argued that she was being naive, that the rules existed to prevent exploitation. The discussion went on for hours. Finally, the Council called for a recess. Lisa was escorted back to a waiting room where Greg and Jake were waiting. "You did great in there," said, hugging her. "I don't know if it was enough," Lisa said. Greg's communicator buzzed. He looked at the message and his eyes went wide. "Lisa, you need to see this." He pulled up a video feed on the room's display screen. It showed 7 from above, a satellite view of the forest. But something had changed. There were markings visible from orbit now, huge symbols carved into the forest canopy or made from carefully arranged light-colored stones. "What is that?" Lisa asked. Zoomed in on one section. "Oh my God, they're messages. They are sending messages." The symbols were crude but clear. They were the same written language they had shown to the humans, but scaled up to enormous size. And they were spreading. The satellite footage showed that over the past 2 weeks, the symbols had appeared across hundreds of miles of forest. "They're communicating between packs," Jake said, "teaching each other. Look, this symbol here appears in at least 15 different locations. They're sharing what they learned from Lisa across their entire continent." Greg pulled up another file. "And that's not all. My team did some deep scanning while the council was meeting. We found ruins, old ones, buried under centuries of growth. They had a more advanced civilization in the past. They declined for some reason, maybe disease or climate change, but they're rebuilding. They were always on this path. Lisa just happened to be there when they were ready to start showing it to outsiders." Lisa stared at the screen. The implications were enormous. This was not a case of human interference changing a species' development. This was a species that had been patiently rebuilding, testing visitors, waiting for someone who would treat them with respect rather than condescension. "We need to show this to the council," Lisa said. They returned to the chambers and presented the new evidence. The reaction was immediate and loud. Council members demanded to know why this was not discovered earlier. The answer was simple: no one had looked. They had been classified as primitive, and so no deep scans had been authorized. Everyone had seen what they expected to see. But there was more evidence to come, and it arrived in a way no one anticipated. The Alpha appeared. Not physically, of course. They had no space travel. But Greg's team had left observation drones in the forest, and one of them had captured something remarkable. The Alpha had found the drone and, rather than destroying it or fleeing from it, had approached it directly. The drone's camera clearly showed the Alpha looking directly into the lens. Then the Alpha had done something that made the entire council chamber fall silent. It had carved a symbol in the ground in front of the drone, a symbol that matched one of the large forest markings. Then it had pointed at the symbol with its nose, looked back at the camera, and waited. "It knows we're watching," whispered. "It knows the drones are cameras. It's trying to communicate with us directly." Over the next hour, the drone footage showed the Alpha and several other creating more symbols. They were simple at first, showing pictures of and humans together. Then they became more complex. They showed the cub with its injured leg. They showed Lisa helping. They showed the exchange of knowledge between Lisa and the old healer. But the final image was what changed everything. The Alpha had carefully carved a large symbol that showed multiple packs coming together, and in the center, a human figure standing with them. Around this central image, the Alpha had carved something that looked like stars. "They're asking to join us," Lisa said, her voice choked with emotion. "They're asking to be part of the galactic community." A council member stood. "This is premature. They have not developed space travel. They do not have advanced technology. The protocols are clear." But another member, an elderly being from a species Lisa did not recognize, raised a hand for silence. The protocols were written to protect developing species from those who would exploit them. But these protocols were also written with the assumption that developing species would be passive subjects of our observation. They are not passive. They are actively seeking contact. They are demonstrating self-awareness, understanding of other species, and a desire for communication. The protocols do not address this situation because we never imagined it would occur. The debate raged for another day. Lisa was called back multiple times to answer questions. She showed them the medical exchange with the old healer. She explained how they had tested the humans by sending the injured cub. She described the intelligence she had seen in their eyes, the emotion, the understanding. But the tide was turning against her. Too many council members were afraid of setting a precedent. If they allowed contact with what other rules might be challenged next? Then Jake burst into the chamber, breaking all protocols about interruptions. "I'm sorry, but you all need to see this, right now." He pulled up a new video feed. It showed the territory from the ground level, and it showed something impossible. They had built something new in just the past few days. It was a structure larger than their village shelters, made from carefully fitted stones and strong wooden beams. "Is that what I think it is?" asked. "It's a meeting hall," Jake said. "Look at the entrance. It's sized for humans. They built it for us. They're preparing for formal contact." The camera moved inside the structure. The walls were covered with the carved symbols, telling the story of first contact. And at the center of the hall was a platform with two raised areas, one sized for and one sized for humans, places of equal importance. But what shocked everyone most was the final carving above the entrance. It showed humans and together, looking up at the stars. And around the border of this carving, they had somehow carved symbols that matched basic galactic common numerals and letters. They had been studying the humans' equipment, learning from their written labels and markings. They were learning Galactic Common, on their own, from observation. Stood slowly. For the first time since Lisa had met him, the ambassador looked uncertain. "They are forcing the issue," he said quietly. "They are demonstrating capabilities specifically to prove they are ready for contact." "Because they are ready," Lisa said firmly. "They've been ready, they've been waiting for us to see it." The elderly council member who had spoken before rose again. "I call for a vote. Not on Dr. Morgan's violations, but on the fundamental question before us. Do we continue to treat thee as subjects to be observed, or do we acknowledge them as neighbors to be respected?" The vote took hours. In the end, it was close. Many species voted to maintain the status, but enough voted for change. Enough voted to trust in the possibility that a species did not need spaceships to be considered people. They would be granted provisional status. They would not be full council members, not yet, but they would be recognized. Contact would be allowed, carefully monitored at first, but allowed. They would have representatives, human ambassadors who would help them navigate galactic politics until they were ready to speak for themselves. And Lisa would be officially reprimanded for her protocol violations, but those violations would be considered justified under extreme circumstances. She would not face criminal charges. When the decision was announced, Lisa felt her knees go weak, and Jake had to steady her. "We did it," whispered. "No," Lisa said, looking at the video feed still showing the meeting hall they had built. "They did it. They everyone's expectations. They proved they were more than anyone thought possible." Greg approached with a rare smile. "Lisa, the council wants to know if you'll accept the position of first human ambassador to the..." Lisa looked at him, then at the screen showing that beautiful meeting hall waiting in the forest. She thought about the cub who had limped toward her, about the alpha who had tested her, about the old healer who had trusted her enough to share knowledge, about an entire species who had been the transport ship descended through Seven's atmosphere on a beautiful morning 5 years after Lisa had first helped an injured cub. She pressed her face to the window, eager to see how much had changed. She was not disappointed. The forest was still there, vast and green, but now it was marked by clearings that held not just simple villages but actual towns. Buildings of stone and timber rose among the trees, designed to work with nature rather than against it. Smoke rose from what Lisa knew were forge houses. They had discovered metalworking 2 years ago, and they had taken to it with the same quick intelligence they showed in everything. Most remarkable were the roads, not paved ones but wide paths cleared through the forest, connecting different pack territories. They had gone from isolated packs to a network of communities, all sharing knowledge and resources. The change had been so fast that some council observers worried it was too fast, that they were burning themselves out trying to catch up to the galaxy's other species. But Lisa knew better. They were not trying to catch up. They were simply becoming what they had always been meant to be. The ship landed at the main human embassy compound. It was built right at the edge of the largest settlement, designed to look like both human and architecture blended together. Lisa had helped design it during her first year as ambassador. Greg was waiting for her at the landing pad, older now with more gray in his hair. He smiled as Lisa stepped off the ship. "Welcome home, Ambassador," he said. "It's good to be back," Lisa said. "How are things?" "See for yourself." He led her toward the settlement. As they walked, moved around them, going about their daily business. Some were carrying tools. Others were transporting goods on simple carts they had designed. Young cubs played in supervised groups, their games complex and imaginative. But what struck Lisa most was how comfortable this seemed around humans now. They did not flee or hide. They simply nodded greetings as they passed. Some even spoke basic galactic common words. "Hello, good morning, how are you?" They reached the great meeting hall, much larger now than the first one they had built. Inside, a session was. The pack councils were meeting with human advisors to discuss trade routes and resource sharing. They had embraced the concept of formal governance quickly, creating a system that honored their pack structures while allowing for larger-scale cooperation. But Lisa was not here for the council session. She had another appointment. The medical center was on the other side of the settlement. It was a joint project, combining human medical knowledge with herbal expertise. Inside, she found who she was looking for. The old healer had passed away 2 years ago, honored by her entire species. But her student had taken her place. The cub that Lisa had first helped, now fully grown and strong, worked in the medical center as the head healer. Its leg had healed perfectly, leaving barely a trace of the old injury. The young healer looked up as Lisa entered and made a joyful sound. It rushed over and pressed its forehead to Lisa's shoulder in the traditional greeting for honored friends. "Hello, Hope," Lisa said, using the private name she had given the cub so long ago. Hope led Lisa through the medical center proudly. The facility treated both and the occasional human who got sick or injured. Hope showed Lisa new techniques they had developed, ways of combining human antibiotics with local plants to create more effective treatments. The young healer had inherited the old one's gift for medicine and had expanded on it brilliantly. But there was something else Hope wanted to show Lisa. In the back of the medical center was a teaching room. Young sat in a circle while an older one taught them about anatomy and healing. On the wall were carved symbols showing different treatments, and at the front of the room was a large carving that made Lisa's throat tight. It showed a human kneeling beside a small, treating an injured leg. It was the same image that had been carved 5 years ago, but this version was more detailed, more refined. It had become iconic among a symbol of the moment when everything changed. Below the carving were words in both symbols and galactic common. "We are known by our kindness." Lisa touched the carving gently. "You remembered." Hope made a soft sound and touched the carving too. Of course they remembered. That moment had defined not just Hope's life, but the future of the entire species. Over the next few days, Lisa visited different parts of the settlement. She met with the Alpha, now older but still commanding respect. The Alpha had become something like a prime minister, representing multiple pack councils in dealings with other species. Under its leadership, they had made remarkable progress while staying true to their values. She visited the forge houses and watched craftspeople creating tools with increasing sophistication. They were working on a printing press, having learned the concept from human books. Soon they would be mass-producing their own written materials. She saw the schools where young cubs learned not just from their own kind, but from human teachers too, and where human students learned from about the forest, about working with nature, about the herbal knowledge that their species had refined over generations. On her 4th day back, arrived with exciting news. "The council approved the next phase," she said breathlessly. "They can send representatives to observer sessions. They'll have voices in discussions that affect their region of space." It was another major step. In just 5 years, they had gone from an unknown species to recognized neighbors with growing political influence. That evening, there was a celebration in the great meeting hall, and humans gathered together, sharing food and stories. They had developed a fermented drink from local fruits that was surprisingly good. Humans had introduced them to music, and now young were experimenting with drums and flutes, creating sounds that blended their natural vocalizations with learned instruments. Lisa stood at the edge of the gathering, watching it all with a sense of wonder. Greg joined her. "You know," he said, "when you helped that cub, I thought you had destroyed your career and possibly doomed our entire expedition." "I remember," Lisa said with a smile. "I was wrong. What you did changed everything. Not just but for how the galaxy thinks about developing species. 3 other worlds have been reclassified in the past year because of the precedent set here. Species that would have been ignored for another century are now getting recognition." "It was not just me," Lisa said. "Hope chose to approach me. The Alpha chose to test us. The old healer chose to trust me. They made those choices. I just responded with basic human decency." "That's the point, though, is not it?" said, joining them. "Basic human decency. That is what they were testing for. They wanted to know if we were the kind of species who would help or the kind who would walk away. And when you helped, you showed them that humanity was worth knowing." The Alpha approached them, walking with dignity despite its age. It had learned some galactic common over the years, enough to make itself understood. "Ambassador Lisa," it said in its careful, accented way, "we have gift." It gestured, and several brought forward a carved wooden panel. It was beautiful, made from a rare white wood that grew only in the deepest parts of the forest. On it was carved the most detailed image Lisa had yet seen of that first meeting between her and Hope. But this carving showed something the others had not. It showed the whole pack standing in the background, watching, judging, hopping. It showed the moment of decision, the instant when Lisa had chosen compassion over rules. For Earth, the Alpha said. For human place, so you remember too. Lisa felt tears in her eyes. It's beautiful, thank you. We remember when other species came, the Alpha continued slowly. Long ago, before my grandparents' grandparents, they watched us, they studied us. We were hurt, we were sick, they did nothing. They went away. We waited, many generations. Then humans came, you saw hurt cub, you helped. That is difference. That is why we trust. The Alpha touched its forehead to Lisa's shoulder one more time, then moved back to join its pack. Jake approached with a grin. So I hear you're staying permanently, not going back to Earth. This is where I am needed, Lisa said. They are going to face challenges as they develop faster. They'll need someone who understands both worlds. And Hope asked with a knowing smile. Lisa laughed. Hope has become like family to me. I know it sounds strange, but I feel more at home here than I ever did on Earth. The celebration continued into the night. Young cubs played with human children who had been born on 7. The next generation would grow up seeing each other not as aliens, but as neighbors, as friends. As Lisa prepared to leave the hall, Hope approached one more time. The young healer was carrying something, a small pouch. Lisa opened it and found seeds from medicinal plants. For you, Hope said in careful galactic common. Grow, remember. I will, Lisa promised. I will always remember. She walked back to her quarters in the embassy compound. The panel they had given her was already being prepared for transport to Earth, where it would hang in the Galactic Council's human headquarters. A reminder of what one act of kindness could accomplish. Lisa stood at her window, looking out at the settlement. Lights flickered in the buildings, their version of lanterns that used a chemical reaction with local plants to create light. In the distance, she could hear the sounds of the forest, the calls of night creatures, the rustle of wind through massive trees. She thought about that day 5 years ago. A cub had limped toward her, injured and in pain. An entire pack had gathered, waiting to see what she would do. They had been testing humanity, judging whether humans were worthy of trust. She had the odds not by being exceptional, but by being decent, by seeing suffering and choosing to help, by treating another species with the respect and compassion she would show anyone. And that simple choice had opened doors neither humans nor had imagined possible. It had proven that the galaxy was big enough for everyone, that development and technology were not the only measures of worth, that kindness mattered more than protocols. They were finding their place in the galaxy, and humanity had gained more than allies. They had gained friends, partners, neighbors who had chosen them not because of human power or technology, but because of human compassion. Lisa touched the seeds Hope had given her. She would plant them tomorrow in the garden behind the embassy. They would grow here in the soil of 7, nurtured by both human hands and knowledge, just like the friendship between two species, growing stronger with each passing day. She had noticed a cub limping toward her. She had the odds, and the whole galaxy was better for it. Hopping, that someone would finally see them as equals. Yes, she said, I accept. Back toward the forest, but before it disappeared into the trees, it looked back at Lisa one more time. It was a look of recognition, of respect, and of hope that this was not the end. Lisa watched them go, wondering if she would ever see them again. She had the odds once by choosing to help. Now she could only hope that the council would defy their own rigid thinking and see what was so clear to her. They deserved to be recognized, not as primitive creatures to be observed from afar, but as people, as neighbors, as potential friends in a vast galaxy. Whatever happened next, Lisa knew she had made the right choice. Sometimes being human meant following your heart even when the rules said otherwise. A child in pain and she had helped. That was what humans did. That was what made them human. The forest was silent again, but Lisa knew they were still out there watching, and now everything had changed.